So first off, welcome for joining us today. This is our bonus webinar, which is part of our Transforming Construction webinar series for 2024-2025. My name's Brendan Searle, and I'll be moderating as usual, but also present some of the slides today too. So just a quick overview of the webinar. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining. I'm going to do a quick intro to the Offsite Construction Research Center. If you've attended our webinars, this would be quite familiar, or you'd be quite familiar with this this part of the presentation. But wanted to do this as there's a lot of folks registered who haven't attended in the past, and then just do a quick overview of Building Transformations, which has partnered with us to deliver the webinar series. I'll then introduce our speakers. We'll then have a presentation from them, and then a quick Q&A and discussion at the end. Now, we do have more slides than normal and more speakers than usual. So if we run out of time for questions, please submit them or send them via email, and we'll make sure to get back to you on them. As mentioned, you can submit questions at any time using the Q&A feature in the control bar. So this is the Microsoft Teams webinar interface, and there's a Q&A separate from the chat. Now, feel free to submit them to the chat, and we'll make sure that we capture those as well. But we prefer the Q&A feature when you're submitting questions. If you have difficulty hearing, just check your speaker settings and audio settings, or if you have any other problems, tell us using the Q&A feature, and our colleague Roshni will be able to help you with that. As a reminder, all sessions will be recorded and made available on our website at umb.ca/OCRC and the Building Transformations website. Quick overview of the University of New Brunswick. So we're actually the oldest English-speaking school in Canada, founded in 1765, I believe, and we were home to the first engineering, computer science, and forestry programs, with the first engineering course being taught in 1854. The university has two campuses now, one in Fredericton and one in St. John, and is home to over 25 research chairs, centers, and institutes. It has also evolved into quite an entrepreneurial school. It won UMB won top or most entrepreneurial university in Canada when it was last awarded, and has seen over 100 startup companies come from UMB in the last decade. Quickly on the research center. So we were founded in 2018, and in 2022 we undertook a new strategic plan where we focused on industry relevance, collaboration, excellence, and integrity. We like highlighting this because all the research we do is very industry driven and collaborative. We've worked, across many institutions when we do projects, including the NRC as shown today, and we've also worked with many industry partners. Our primary focus is in these four areas, so around process and productivity improvement, digital technology implementation, structures and building enclosure testing. We have a new high performance building research lab, as well as our benchmarking, innovation, and construction kind of area, which this roadmap that we're presenting today would fall under that last topic, and that's really to help drive change as it relates to policy, procurement, regulatory, finance, and so on. Quickly, I just want to highlight our partner in delivering this, so Building Transformations. It's a not-for-profit member-led association, formerly known as CANBIM, or the Canada BIM Council. And we've recently revamped our vision. So vision's transforming the built environment through innovation, and the mission is to foster a community that is committed to knowledge sharing and advancing technology and innovation in the built environment. The organization has over 2,000 members. I encourage you to check it out. Many folks probably don't realize this, but their company may be a member, and if that's the case, they would get a free membership. In addition to the membership, there are several programs that Building Transformations offers, including Innovation Spotlight publication, in-person events. Here's the rest planned for 2025. Here are some that are so far planned for 2026, including Calgary, Montreal, Phoenix, Halifax, and Toronto. And then quickly, a lot of Building Transformation programs wouldn't be made possible without their mission partners, so they just wanted to highlight all of them here. And as a more I just want to do a quick shout out, I guess, to PCL as their primary strategic partner. Finally, I just want to thank our sponsors here at the OCRC. So Government of Canada through ACOA has been very supportive of the Research Center, as well as our founding partner, OSCO Construction Group. And then finally, our marketing partners, which are listed here. Now, we're going to jump right into it. So now we'll invite June, who's a Research Council Officer with the National Research Council, Nicole Odo, our Project Manager at the Offsite Construction Research Center, Sadaf Montezeri, to join me on screen. We're going to be presenting our roadmap to transform the Canadian construction industry through industrialized construction, research, and innovation. And before handing it off to June, I just wanted to quickly highlight our project team. So while the OCRC is presenting this today, it was really a team effort. And we're all highlighted here. I wanted to specifically highlight some folks who aren't on the call or presenting today. So Jeff Rankin, who's our Executive Director at the Offsite Construction Research Center, as well as a professor in civil engineering. Mohammed Al Hussein, many of you would know from the University of Alberta. His team, John and Tedeschi, also supported this as well. Jeff Endine from Cass Consultancy and Mark Farmer from Cass Consultancy. Mark actually did a keynote at the workshops for this, and we have a recording for that if folks are interested. So now I'm going to hand it off to June to talk a little bit about the NRC.
All right, thanks, Brandon. So before I get started, just want to thank everyone for being here today, and I want to give a special round of thank you to our partners and collaborators. So University of New Brunswick, University of Alberta, and Cass Consultancy for all their hard work and effort and leadership that kind of got this roadmap to where it is today. Throughout the process, we've leveraged key learnings from overseas, kind of tapped into our domestic expertise as well throughout our workshops and interviews as well. So thank you to everyone that's participated and provided valuable input to this cause. So with that said, my name is Jun Hao Wang. Like Brandon mentioned, I lead an initiative at the National Research Council around advanced construction practices. And I'll go through a brief overview of the NRC, introduce everyone to the organization, what we've been up to, and what kind of prompted us and motivated us to endeavor in these workshops and the roadmap development. So the NRC has been around for over 100 years. I think we're coming up to close to 110 years at this point, very soon. And we have three core mandates, if you will. So first is advancing scientific and technical knowledge in the industries and sectors that we serve. The second is supporting government policy objectives. So in current context, think about housing and wildfires as examples. And the third is supporting business innovation by working directly with SMEs across the country and supporting their R&D endeavors. Next slide, please. So the organization has over 2,000 research scientists spread across these 14 different research centers. And for for our discussion today, the most relevant would be the Construction Research Center. And last time we checked, we have anywhere between 200 and 250 scientists with a broad range of expertise spanning from building sciences, acoustics, fire, seismic, offsite construction, BIM and digital construction, just to name a few. Next slide, please. So many of you probably are familiar with this by now, but for the folks that are not too familiar, I'll just go through it very quickly. So the NRC has a key initiative called the NRC Platform to decarbonize the construction sector at scale. And within this, there are three core programs. And where today's discussion and the roadmap falls under is the highlighted one, the third one, the Construction Sector Digitalization and Productivity, or CSDP program. And more specifically, this program is broken into three key thematic areas. And the bottom box there, advanced construction practices, that includes industrialized construction within its scope, is where this roadmap kind of falls under. Next slide, please. So I'm sure we've all heard this many times probably over the past few years, so I won't dwell on it too much, but just want to highlight again that, in Canada, construction productivity is at a 3-decade low, and the photo on the right kind of highlights, I think it's a decent picture of what a typical multi-unit residential development project kind of looks like from the starting point of land purchasing to occupancy. And when things go well, it can take upwards to 6, 7, 8 years. So you can imagine some of the macroeconomic factors, policy changes, government changes, and things like this that can impact every aspect of this overall project lifecycle or construction lifecycle. So we do have a multifaceted challenge that we face as an industry. What we believe is that industrialized construction is a small but important part of the overall solution. There really isn't a silver bullet solution, if you will, and it really needs to be a multi-pronged approach to come up with various solutions that kind of fit into the different components of this overall construction lifecycle that you see on the right there. And I think some of the findings in our roadmap can help address some of these specifically for industrialized construction. Next slide, please. To kind of add to this and exacerbate the challenge from the previous slide, the Canadian Occupational Projection System indicated all the occupations that face shortage conditions and ones that are expected to face risks of shortage conditions in the coming decade. And you can see, I don't think I highlighted all of them, but you can see that many of them are construction related. And there's no reason that some of this work cannot be done in factories and kind of mitigated and supported through automation and robotics. And we know that some of our industry leaders, and some of you I'm sure are in attendance today, are already delivering projects successfully across the country ahead of schedule. And so it is being done in Canada, but just not at the pace and the scale we'd like it to be at. So all that to say, we have to figure out a way to build faster with less people, and we want to be able to help with that through support of industrialized construction. Next slide, please. So all that brings us to the ACP, or Advanced Construction Practices theme, which is the one that I lead. And really, the main vision or goal of this theme is understanding and identifying the key barriers and reducing those barriers to help with the accelerated adoption of some of these technologies like offsite construction, industrialized construction. And when we first got started, the first question was, where do we start and how do we start? And right around this time, we also had the privilege to see our U.S. colleagues' housing and urban development report on offsite construction R&D roadmap that they published. And what we realized early on is that we needed to engage industry at large and collect as much data as possible from experts and boots on the ground, if you will, to properly capture kind of what's preventing us from faster adoption of some of these technologies that may seem like a no-brainer to adopt, but nonetheless, it's seen very slow adoption in Canada. And we also didn't want to approach this from only a scientific perspective either, or scientific research perspective either. So you'll see that some of the initiatives identified in the roadmap isn't your typical scientific R&D type of projects. But this was intentional on the project team's part. Next slide, please. So this slide is kind of busy, but it's just to highlight kind of the progress and a bit of, I guess, some color in terms of the effort, workshops, some publications to date. I won't go through them too much in detail, but you'll see some key highlighted pieces that we want to work on over the next 4 years or so and beyond. But with that said, with some of these efforts, one thing I'd like to point out, which I think Brandon will probably go into more detail later, is what we found is that there's so many different regional variations in terms of technologies, products, market demand, the market pull, regulatory differences, and things like this. So it's very challenging to have like a one-size-fits-all national umbrella solution, if you will, to tackle some of these barriers. So this led the project team to suggest potentially having these smaller regional hubs, which can directly work with local industry and help address some of the specific needs that are consistent with the capacity, regional capabilities, and regional policy drivers. Then link it to a central hub. So you can share, lessons learned, best practices, and things like this, and even potentially share resources across these hubs as well, and kind of build on that momentum nationally. And many of these initiatives that are identified in the roadmap may and probably will require such leadership from the different regions to move the needle if we will make an impact in terms of adoption in industrialized construction in Canada. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide for me. So please do reach out to either myself or our program director, Ahmad Sadek. I believe he may be on the call as well. Provide us with any feedback, questions, opportunities, and ideas for collaboration as well. And we're happy to kind of chat with you and discuss how we can work together. So I'll pass it over to Nicole to dive a bit deeper into the findings and the contents of the roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you, June. So diving into the roadmap that was developed for NRC and for the Canadian industrialized construction industry, we were looking at the construction potential that IC can bring to Canada. So there are things like tackling national challenges. So IC can solve productivity, labor, and housing crises. Also, there are barriers at this point that need to be overcome for more widespread adoption of industrialized construction. So the roadmap addresses adoption barriers such as regulation, financing, procurement, and labor skills. This also took an evidence-based approach, so through literature review and then in-person workshops, one-on-one interviews, and surveys with all of the industry, academia, and government. We got a wide range of perspectives and pulled that together into a strategic roadmap for action. So the final product being actionable recommendations for NRC and industry stakeholders. Next slide. The objectives and scope of this project included, first of all, understanding the IC barriers and helping to develop a national strategy for how we could remove these barriers. Number two was engage stakeholders from public and private sectors. So as I mentioned earlier, having academia in the room, but also industry participants as well as government. And the last was deliver an industry-informed roadmap for adoption and R&D priorities. Next slide. So what is industrialized construction? This is a transformative shift in the construction industry, aiming to significantly increase productivity. As June mentioned earlier, construction does struggle with productivity and not seeing the same growth that other sectors see in terms of productivity. So this includes mechanization, automation, and advanced manufacturing technologies. Some interrelated domains of IC, we dive deeper into this in the full roadmap report, but we have these 4 categories: offsite construction, which you may be more familiar with just if you're attending things like sessions from the Offsite Construction Research Center from us. Also additive manufacturing, which is more commonly known as 3D printing. And then we have product-led site labor reduction. So this is things like cut to measure or pre-sized materials. So these are things that are on the construction site that construction sites can do that aren't necessarily a full volumetric module, for example. So think like pre-done formwork or something. And then there's also process-led site labor reduction. So again, it can be in a traditional construction setting, but using things like advanced digital technologies and other strategies to increase productivity through these processes. Next slide. So why is industrialized construction critical now? So there are a few drivers of IC adoption in Canada. The first, which we've mentioned a couple times, is productivity stagnation. Also, there is an expected deficit of 3.5 million plus housing unit deficit by 2030, which I also had an update this morning. This is projected to be even more now. sustainability goals for Canada, and aging workforce in the construction sector. Next slide. So the roadmap development process for this project, we started with a literature review. This was insights from international best practices, so looking at what other countries have done to increase adoption in their area, as well as previous studies on IC in Canada. We then hosted regional workshops, one in Toronto and one in Edmonton. Again, this was just getting all stakeholders in the room, getting perspectives from them about what might be a barrier to more widespread adoption of IC in Canada. And we began identifying actionable strategies to drive innovation and growth. And a lot of these strategies were developed with the workshop participants. And then we took all of that, and we had some data gaps when it came to who was in the room for these workshops. So we identified what stakeholders might not have had the participation that we were hoping for. And then we scheduled one-on-one virtual interviews with them to make sure that we could get that perspective in the different actionable strategies that we were presenting. So that filled any data gaps that were identified during the workshop. And then all of these actionable strategies were put out into a public survey. So this allowed us to rank the strategies, also put an expected timeline for implementation, and just gather any additional industry perspectives that anyone would like to share before we went into finalizing these strategies and creating that roadmap. There was then qualitative analysis, which was developing the actionable strategies out of all of these ideas that had come out of these workshops and interviews. And then quantifiably ranking the actionable strategies of what would have the most impact. And then a structured implementation timeline. So when could these actually be implemented over the next several years? Which then brought us to the final results, which is our final report of all of the initiatives and detailed who would be involved, timelines, things like that for the various initiatives for delivered to NRC. Next slide. So this is going back to the literature review. This is where we started looking at all these different countries and what they've done, just learning global lessons of what others have done in terms of industrialized construction. I won't go through all of these in detail. You're welcome to check out the full report on our website, which dives deep into everything that these countries have done. But some key takeaways are there was a lot of financial and technical incentives with respect to offsite construction, or I should say industrialized construction, in these countries, as well as policy had a large impact across many of these countries, policy specifically for offsite construction and I keep saying offsite construction, industrialized construction, and how you can eliminate these barriers directly within the policies that are made, as well as a more widespread adoption of BIM or digital technologies in general. There's a lot of things that have to go into the design and even the planning process where digital technologies can help enable this type of construction approach. Next slide. And then moving into the workshops. So as I mentioned, we had stakeholders in the room in these Toronto and Edmonton workshops, and we had actual engagement, which is the bar in gray, and our target engagement, which is the bar in red. So there were some gaps in terms of stakeholders that we might have wanted more of in the room, just to make sure we were capturing all of those perspectives. So then next slide, we went into some individual interviews. So we booked separate interviews with individuals from government and the public sector, industry and trade associations, standards and regulatory authorities, designers and planners, manufacturing, and financial. Just again, to close that gap of we wanted to make sure we had ideas from all of these different areas of the industry. Next slide. So in summary, the challenges that IC adoption is facing right now was pulled together into these categories, which then led into the main focus areas for the roadmap. So these main barriers that were identified through these interviews and workshop sessions were financing and insurance, transportation and logistics, government misalignment, cultural issues, regulations and codes, data gaps, and training and education. So these were the main themes of barriers that came out of these sessions. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sadaf, who will dive deep into all the different initiatives that came out of these areas, these challenges for adopting IC.
Thank you, Nicole, and hello, everybody. I will go through the focus areas for actions. The following focus areas for roadmap development have been identified based on engagement with industry stakeholders in the data collection phase, as Nicole described. This collaborative approach ensured that the most relevant and actionable strategies were captured. So this framework enabled organizations to effectively support IC through these 6 categories: policy implementation, procurement improvements, financial incentives, awareness campaign, and research-driven decision-making tools. So let's begin with the policy and regulatory frameworks that needed to support IC. We recommended 5 initiatives. First, to simplify and align approval process across region. Second, harmonize funding and tie it to procurement incentives. The third initiative in these categories identify inefficiencies in codes and policies. The fourth, which align policies across municipal, provincial, and federal levels. And the last one, ensure long-term policy stability to build industry confidence. These steps all address government misalignment and outdated regulations, which were 2 major barriers to IC adoption, the slides that Nicole talked about. Next, we looked at procurement models and performance systems, an essential area for advancing IC with 3 initiatives. PM1 focuses on creating collaborative procurement models that capture real value of IC. The second initiative calls for improving the language used in contracts and RFPs. And as you know, the clear and consistent wording helps reduce confusion and make it easier for more industry players to get involved. And the last initiative of this category involves updating standards, contracts in collaboration with the Canadian Construction Documents Committee, CCDC, by modifying documents which make them more IC friendly, especially to earlier stage projects. And together, all these efforts addresses key barriers in transportation, logistic, and financing, which helping to de-risk and also accelerate IC adoption. The third category focuses on financial and insurance services, which is a critical enablers for scaling IC with 6 initiatives. The first one recommends government underwriting of lending against IC. The FI2 supports offering tax incentives to de-risk R&D investments, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises. The third one calls for a more flexible R&D funding with somehow less paperwork, quicker approvals, so that more companies can innovate in IC. The 4 initiative in the financial and insurance services categories promotes structured financial solutions like long-term loans or guarantees and public-private partnership to help scale IC projects. The 5th would suggest creating a best practice pro forma document for developers to improve cost certainty and investment confidence. And the last initiative that was identified for the financial and insurances involves case studies to better understand current gaps in insurance products. And we could say that altogether, these recommendations address a major barrier to IC adoption, which is access to financing and appropriate insurance solutions. Next. Okay, the fourth category emphasizes the importance of building awareness, developing skills, and promoting collaboration across the IC ecosystem, which consists of 3 initiatives. By first proposes launching a national awareness campaign using case studies to build trust in IC's potential and also highlight its real-world success stories. The second focuses on identifying and addressing skill gaps by investing, for example, in targeted trainings. We can ensure that workforce is ready to support IC methods. And the last one calls for standardizing terminology, product types, and DFMA collaboration. This helps align all stakeholders from design to manufacturing and supports consistency across the value chain. Together, all these steps aim to overcome 2 key challenges: cultural resistance and lack of education and training, both of which are critical for successful IC adoption. So the next initiative focuses on understanding and IC construction capacity with future demand, especially when it comes to labor, skills, and infrastructure. Consists of 3 initiatives, with the first one aims to measure the labor benefits of IC. By showing how it addresses Canada's specific challenges, like, for example, remote construction and extreme climates. The CC2 involves mapping the current offsite construction landscape, what solutions exist, and who can deliver them, and how ready the supply chain is. And the last one in this category is about aligning incentives with real-world capacity. If we grow demand too quickly, for example, without knowing that the industry can deliver, it can lead to strain. So this initiative promotes smarter data-driven growth, which could all these steps help to inform training and education efforts and overcome cultural resistance to IC adoption. And the last one, to support informed decision-making in IC, research and data sharing play a critical role. With RD1, the first initiative emphasizes the need for R&D focused on standardized tools and methodologies for capturing and sharing industry data. And the second one proposes developing a pre-manufactured value toolkit tailored to Canada. This would help quantify the financial and also commercial benefits of IC for owners and lenders, making it easier to justify investment and financing. These 2 actions in this category tackle key industry challenges, data gaps, and the need for clearer evidence to support regulatory and financial decisions. I'll now hand it over to Brandon to take through the next section. Thank you.
Thanks, Sadaf. Thanks, folks. So I have about 5 or 6 slides to wrap up, then we'll get to some questions. I see some questions coming in there from Enrique and Johan. So we will post the emails. It's on the last slide as well. So I'll just, you can take a snip of that when that comes through. And on the global best practices, it's actually in the report that is published. There's a minor edit to do to the report, but we'll republish that shortly and make sure you have that. So Key actions and implementation strategies. So within our roadmap, there's actually a dashboard that highlights the initiative and how we're going to action them. So it goes through the initiative, metrics to score its success, who the key stakeholders are, who the other stakeholders are that should be involved, the role of the federal government as well as the National Research Council. As June mentioned, some of the initiatives aren't R&D necessarily. There are initiatives that should be led by an industry alliance or some type of industry body, sometimes a Canadian Infrastructure Bank or whatever it might be. And so we tried to identify that. Expected timeline for implementation, ease of implementation, scope of implementation, what the impact will be out of 10, and then the steps for implementation. Obviously, this was actually done before the federal election, and there's a lot more emphasis on prefab or OSC, which we encapsulate in IC. So some of this might actually be sped up, fingers crossed, as we roll things out. So I'll just go to the next slide here. I'm going to go through one quick example. You can check them all out in the roadmap, but I'm just going to touch on policy and regulatory frameworks, so that simplify, improve, and harmonize approval processes. And a lot of this ties to permitting and trying to streamline policy, which we've heard a lot of issues associated with that. So each initiative has a dashboard like this, where you see here the key stakeholders, regulatory and code authorities, other stakeholders, government and private sector, public sector, construction and development, design and planning departments, Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. It was highlighted during the workshops that ensuring that we have the architects involved will be key as we go through this process to really streamline and increase speed of construction. And then having CMHC involved to ensure that some of the programs actually incentivize the use of this and eliminate some quote unquote red tape associated with it. So we highlighted the role of the federal government to work with innovative jurisdictions to create a pilot R&D study and streamline codes. By that, I interpret that as, align an innovative municipality who can work with the province or the federal government on aligning a pilot study where we actually document how it worked, how it didn't work, what went well, what didn't go well, and then present that to everyone. We have an expected timeline of 2028, which is further out than we should be, but aligning folks when it comes to policy can be difficult, which is why the ease of implementation is difficult, and we expect the impact to be 9 out of 10. Percentage is reduction in approval time from permit application to building occupancy, and number of jurisdictions adopting streamlined approvals. Scope of implementation is all levels of industrialized construction. So whether that be offsite construction, and by the way, that when we say that, we mean all forms in terms of volumetric modular, structural panels, non-structural elements or sub-assemblies, for example. And then it could be used again for, if you're looking at additive manufacturing or other forms of on-site type methods of IC. Location is involving local and regional. So that ties back to what June was saying about having clusters with regional leads, and steps for implementation are done there. We had some prerequisite initiatives identified. So in some cases, it will make sense to have other initiatives completed before executing these. And those are just identified there in the dashboard. Our timeline and impact level of strategic initiatives is all here. And so the darker the red, the harder it is to execute, and the lighter, the easier. So you can check that out. You can see some are long-term, but in all of them, they should be, done in the next 5 years. Some will extend beyond 5 years as it relates to aligning government, developing, capturing data, housing that data, keeping it up to date, ensuring policy continuity, etc. So as June had mentioned in one of his slides, there was talk about a national hub and spoke model for industrialized construction. And, since the federal election, there's been a lot of discussion around this. I know in BC, there's a kind of an alliance forming organically where they had shared some insight with their premier's office and how to really scale up offsite construction and for speed and building housing in British Columbia. I know in Ontario there's an initiative being led by a few folks who are advocating for policy change. I know the Modular Building Institute as well has hired an advocacy and lobbying group in Ottawa to advocate for this. And then closer to home here in New Brunswick, we've been approved an Atlantic Offsite Housing Innovation Project, which involves all 4 provinces of Atlantic Canada in a way of forming an alliance. So this stuff is starting to happen organically, but what we wanted to make sure we recommended and included our Canadian Leaf in there, particularly with what's happening south of the border, is that we have this hub and spoke system where we are sharing data, insights, lessons learned, etc. And we align these with, hubs of R&D at universities that are already doing work in this sector, and then tie that all back to NRC in Ottawa. And so, naturally, I mentioned Dr. Mohammed Al Hussein earlier. He's been doing work in this area for 30 plus years. Has a chair in industrialized construction. So, Western Canada makes sense to have a cluster through U of A as an example. And then here in Atlantic, with us at UMB, Dr. Haas is on this call. There could be a central or an eastern R&D cluster that involves Waterloo, for example. So this is one thing that we feel is important. And as NRC continues to fund these projects, there's a lot of good data and lessons learned that are coming out, and we need a hub or a central point for industry, academia, government to go to look for that information. So that was a key output from our roadmap. The next is just, I want to talk about the call to action. So we've received some feedback on this roadmap. One of them was that it was well done. They can tell that there's rigor behind it, but they felt that it could lack a bit of urgency. So I said I'm going to do my best to make this, highlight how urgent this is. So the first thing we talked about was adopting a national industrialized construction framework. So we've talked to folks in Sweden, New Zealand, Australia, the UK. One thing that worked really well, and it really started in the UK, and other countries are looking at the UK and what they have done well and what they have not done as well, and how can we learn from it. One thing they did well was the Modern Methods of Construction framework. And so we are now, as a research center, finalizing an IC framework that we hope could get adopted, and we'll present it to our Atlantic Canadian provinces soon. Hope that they can adopt that. And what that then allows is the policymakers, the ones that are calling me, and I'm sure many folks on this call daily, asking, what's the difference between modular and prefabrication and panels, and what's volumetric modular, and what's a bathroom pod and a kitchen pod? It starts to actually, by having these categories, it should simplify things, and for the policymakers and elected officials, give them common language to kind of understand things. And then that hopefully will feed down into how you procure contract language and so on, using a common categories and definitions. We then are continuing to work on streamlining policy to enable industrialized construction, and specifically offsite construction. So as you all know, particularly when it comes to offsite, volumetric, modular, and others, there's policy barriers that exist. And a lot of them is, you go to, I'm going to use an example of a provincial housing corp going into a municipality, and that municipality having a policy that says one thing, and then a policy in another department says another thing. And how do those get aligned? And then on top of that, CMHC might have a requirement, and the federal government might have a requirement through another program, and the provincial government might have a different requirement. So just ensuring, doing our best to align those policies. And I think we're going to start that through a pilot study where we highlight, some of the larger urban centers that are potentially more innovative and have a willingness to try something, and work with the provincial and federal governments to do that. Next is, and I want to emphasize this a lot because I was on a call with some folks yesterday in Europe, and this was the biggest issue that they faced, was creating that sustainable demand to de-risk innovation investment. So, a lot of folks on this call would say, we've been in this industry for a long time, and the ones who are still around were able to scale up and scale down when demand changed. As a result, they may have not invested as much capital dollars in automation and so on. Unfortunately, we're at a point right now where labor is scarce, and there's a need to invest in ways to streamline labor, automated ways to scale up what they can do through framing tables and different things like that. But to do that, you have to have sustainable demand. We don't touch on it as much in the roadmap, but some examples that we've heard of recently are really looking to like military residences, for example. So if you create a sustainable demand streamline to deliver residences to communities who have military families, then the industry now has that sustainable demand, is investing in their capacity, scaling up to then mature themselves and deliver for the private sector. And that's one thing we wanted to highlight. The other piece not shown here is actually a capacity study. So I heard in the UK that one of the big problems that they did when they started implementing, okay, we're going to build X amount of homes using volumetric modular, they didn't actually know what capacity the industry had. Our current prime minister said we're going to build 500 million homes a year, where the country has never built more than 250,000. Or sorry, I said billion, 500 million homes a year, and the country has never built more than 250,000. So one thing that needs to be undertaken is a capacity study, and tie that back to that framework, adopting that national framework in item 1. And so we believe, that you do that capacity and you say, okay, these companies can deliver volumetric modulars for this sector of residential and ICI. These companies link up to structural panels, whether it's mass timber, precast concrete, light gauge steel or lightwood framing, etc. And they have this capacity, and that's how we can really scale up and meet this these housing crisis. We then need to align stakeholders across government, academia, and industry, and that so 1, 2, and 3 involves them aligning. So that's another item. And then finally, invest in R&D and workforce upskilling or retraining. So, that probably looks as we're saying that to make some money as a research center. But what it really is if you look at the productivity and construction versus many other sectors, you can also overlay that with their investment in R&D and manufacturing and ICT and agriculture. Their investment in R&D increase, and so did their productivity. And so there's a gap there in investment in R&D to really move the industry forward, and also workforce upskilling. One thing we're doing to address that is creating an advanced methods of construction diploma, which we are tentatively launching next year. But beyond, so that's really targeting the engineers and architects and kind of the professionals that are on the front end, but the trades need some upskilling. So locally we're speaking with the community colleges and different things of how training the trades would change when it comes to working in a factory versus working on a job site. So that's a key piece to all of this, and it's not going to happen overnight, but it's something we need to do to drive the industry forward. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention. We have about 10 minutes left for questions. I'll leave our email addresses on there, so feel free to reach out to any of the 4 of us, or there's also our offsite construction at umb.ca email, which comes to a few inboxes here at UMB. So we'll make sure you get a reply that way. But I'll now go to questions if anyone wanted to write in the Q&A or chat. I'm seeing no questions. I might have to start calling people out. I know a lot of the names on here. Perfect. Here's some. So first question is, create presentation. This is a big action list to get done by 2030. How do you get the industry to mobilize to assist in achieving these goals? I have an opinion, but I'll maybe go to my colleagues. Did anyone want to try that, or do you want me to jump into it?
Yeah, you can take a stab at it first. Maybe I'll add something after.
Sure. So, Craig, I think we've talked about this a little bit. My opinion is we need to create a national alliance of some sort. We've talked about there's within offsite construction, it's going to, I mean, when it comes to responding to the housing crisis and then, healthcare crisis that will come afterwards in the schools and everything else, I think we need to align ourselves as an industry. So I think an alliance, an industry body that includes, the volumetric modular folks and the mass timber folks through CWC and CPCI for the precasters and the sorry, I have it on my desk. CISC for the steel folks, aligning them as an alliance and one voice. I believe that a lot of the initiatives listed here would actually benefit all forms of offsite construction. And so alignment rather than debate over what's better between panels and volumetric modular, or what's better between steel or wood or whatever it might be. I think that's key to mobilize the industry. We highlighted what's happening in BC, and we'll likely see, similar to a lot of other initiatives. Some folks might not like this answer, but BC is often ahead of the curve compared to the rest of the country on this. So we'll likely see BC come out with and have a good case study of how you should align. It helps also who our Minister of Housing is now federally and where he's located. So that's my opinion. I think we got to mobilize ourselves as an industry, a willingness to share data to really move the industry forward. Because I think we've said this, or a lot of people have said this to me, like it's not about competing modular against another modular company or panelize against modular. It's like, how can we move more activities to an offsite factory, which is safer for our laborers, reduction in GHG emissions, speeds up construction, and ultimately long term should create more cost certainty and de-risk the industry. So that's kind of my thoughts, but I don't know, June, if you wanted to add.
Yeah, and I think, you covered a lot of it, but I agree, Craig. The government can't do it alone, especially a research organization like ourselves. And like Brendan alluded to in BC, it seems like it's happening organically to have industry sort of a consortium almost, or at least kind of a hub. We can keep the similar language as our presentation. And we recently had a discussion on the Quebec side as well, and I want to give a shout out to them because it seems like it's happening there too, with a lot of kind of government financial backing at the same time, manufacturers and builders and industry kind of coming together to kind of mobilize on some of these industrialized construction and automated construction efforts. So I think that kind of needs to happen. And then in terms of, I 100% agree with the data sharing piece because that is going to help us really better understand and identify, how we can improve and measure ourselves within kind of our efforts. So in order to do that, we need to have some sort of a trusted body or organization that the rest of the industry is willing to share some of the information with. So I think these hubs can serve very nicely. And then to have a national kind of a glue piece that can bring all that together, I think is also important.
Thanks, June. I'm going to go to the next one. So Daryl mentions procurement model proposes to be a buyer of factory-built homes, given challenges, indicated codes, regulatory capacity, lack of national standardization at this time. How can this be done in short term? So I guess my answer would be, this is when we were looking at this, and I don't know if June highlighted the program that June's been working in is called the NRC Platform to Decarbonize the Construction Sector at Scale. And so a lot of the stuff that we highlighted is like, how do we actually scale things up, do it at scale? That said, there's a lot of good work that is happening in pockets. In PEI, obviously, that we have the largest modular apartment, to my knowledge, the largest volumetric modular apartment building that will be complete in PEI in 2025 happening right now. And so there's a lot of good stuff happening. I think to do it at scale, we have to document these things and share them what has and hasn't worked when it comes to how you procured, how it was financed, the insurance associated with it, who took on the risk at what time, and different things. And a lot of that pre-planning piece, I mean, a lot of folks who have been in this industry for a long time have told me that the pre-planning is the most important. It's critical to executing a successful project. So I think we highlight those, and then by doing that, we can scale up. Now, there's codes are going to vary by region given the nature of the country. Capacity, well, there may be a lack of capacity, so to speak. We're currently doing a study to understand capacity across the country for volumetric modular construction, and what we've been told in our brief conversations with the manufacturers is that if there's sustainable demand, they believe that they can triple capacity without significant investment in automation, but by having that sustainable demand, they can build the business case to really scale up. So I think it's doable, but we have to document and share our lessons learned and create that alliance. Going back to what Craig said, I don't know if others want to jump in there. No. Going to go to the next. Are there lenders in other countries that are advancing project financing who we can learn from? Marcel, I think what we saw was a lot of it is coming initially from government programs that are, whether it's to build public housing, military housing, indigenous housing, etc., that we can look to, and those can be in the UK or Ireland or Sweden. The other piece that we can look at is some of the successful companies are really a vertically integrated company where they do the development, they finance, and they own a factory, and scaling that up is one method. But it is a good question. It's probably worth exploring. I don't know, June, is NRC looking at that, or is that something that's on your radar?
It is, but it's not something that we would address. So it would be something if there's the right party and group of folks that are interested to kind of tackle that and look at that. It's something that there probably is an opportunity to leverage some of the funds that we have to commission some projects and studies around that.
Perfect. Thanks, Marcel. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but we will look to them. And I don't want to call him out because I don't know if he's prepared, but our colleague at Cost Consultancy has done work he's on the call, Jeff and Dean. He's done work in Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, UK, etc. And he may have some examples. So we'll probably see if we can get back to you on that as well. Next, I'll go to Johan here. So we are a startup panel manufacturer in Midland, Ontario, and looking for involvement in any and all R&D programs, councils, advocacy groups. How do we make sure we get invited to these opportunities? I'd say to first, reach out to June, reach out to our center, reach out to our colleague Mohammed Al Hussein at U of A. Also, there are a lot of associations. So the Modular Building Institute has a Canadian council. Might want to check that out. And I believe they have a research council as well. The NRC has the Industrial Research Assistance Program, which has some funding and can connect their industry clients with expertise across the country. So I encourage checking that out if you haven't already. I'm mindful of time, so maybe we'll do one more and then we'll capture the rest and answer over email. And I'll do this one first just because I want to make sure it's answered. So one of the projects was, what about student housing? Is UMB doing any prototypes? Yes, it's being explored right now. So a couple things. We have a lab that I referenced where we're doing some prototype, and that's more testing around building efficiency and modular testing. So we have 3 modules coming to us from one of our industry partners. They're providing them in kind, and we're going to retrofit 2 out of the 3 and monitor them. That's probably not what you're asking about, though, Carolyn. You're probably asking about the actual student housing or student residences. So UAB has hired a company who is on this call to, I believe, do a feasibility study for volumetric modular residence on campus. And I believe they're exploring other forms of prefab or offsite construction for future residents, which I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know they've been impressed with some of the stuff they've seen around mass timber at UBC or in Ontario. So they're exploring volumetric modular. So I think we'll see more of that here at UNB, and us as a research center, we sit under the Faculty of Engineering. We hope to capture that project as a case study to really highlight the lessons learned and the pros and cons, and be able to share that with our peers. So with that, I'm going to stop here just because we're at time. I know there's quite a few questions that went unanswered. We're going to capture all those and we'll make sure to answer them to the group via email. I want to thank everyone for your time and thank you for participating in our webinar series. We'll be back in the fall. This was our last one, but we will be back in the fall. And if you have an interest in presenting, feel free to reach out to myself, Nicole, or Roshni, who's also on this, and we'll see how we can fit you in for the next series. So enjoy your summer. Reach out, and I guess just quickly on one last question, someone asked what we're doing for pilot projects. We're already undertaking some of these. We're doing a capacity study, which we hope to have some answers by mid-June. We're doing we're meeting in collaboration with CSA, CCDC, NRC, and others to talk about the CCDC contract documents. And we've begun some work in that as well. And then the procurement side, we have a project approved in collaboration with NRC to look at procurement guide for residential construction. And we also have a proposal in for a procurement guide for ICI sector. Looking at to leverage offsite construction. So that's just some stuff we're doing at the research center, but there's others doing work across the country as well. So thanks again for your time, and feel free to reach out at any point, and enjoy your summer. Thanks.